My name is Ava Carter, and this is the story of how my family ignored the most important day of my life until the day my $5 million penthouse forced them to see me. Not as the forgotten middle child. Not as the girl who never deserved attention. But as a woman who built a life so extraordinary that even the people who once dismissed her could no longer look away. Before we begin, if you've ever felt overlooked by the people who should have loved you the most, this story is for you. And if you want more stories about strength, betrayal, and that quiet kind of revenge life delivers to those who refuse to break, make sure you like, subscribe, and share your own story in the comments. Your voice matters here. Now, let me take you back to where everything really began. I grew up believing invisibility was my natural state. My family consisted of my parents, my older sister Lauren, and my younger brother Ethan, the golden child, and the miracle baby. And me? I was the quiet one, the self-sufficient one, the one no one worried about because I always figured things out. In other words, I was the child who slipped through the cracks without anyone noticing. I used to think it was my fault. Maybe I wasn't loud enough, bright enough, or needy enough to earn space in their world. But later, I realized something. Some families don't neglect the child who needs least, they simply prioritize whoever shines in the way they want. And I wasn't their definition of shine. Throughout school, I worked harder than anyone. Straight A's, honor classes, tutoring, internships, anything to build the future I knew I wanted. Not for them. For me. I still remember the day I received my acceptance letter to Harrington University, one of the top programs in the country. I stood in the kitchen holding the envelope like it carried my entire destiny. My mother barely looked up from her phone. "That's great, sweetie. Can you grab the laundry when you're done?" My father didn't say anything at all. Lauren announced she had gotten a new job offer, and suddenly everyone's attention shifted to her. Ethan wanted money for some new gaming setup, and they handed it to him immediately. My acceptance letter sat on the counter for the rest of the night, unopened by anyone but me. I learned something that day. If they wouldn't celebrate me now, they never would. So I stopped expecting them to. For years later, graduation approached. I had maintained a perfect GPA, completed a senior thesis that my professors said was publication-worthy, and already had a job offer waiting at a top tech firm. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine my family being proud of me, maybe even showing up. So one evening, a month before the ceremony, I sat at the dinner table at my parents' house. Everyone was eating, talking over each other, the way they always did. I cleared my throat. "My graduation is on June 12th, I said. "It would mean a lot if you could all come." Lauren didn't look up. "June 12th? I might be traveling for work." Ethan shrugged. "I'll see if my friends are doing anything that day." And my parents exchanged a look, one I knew too well. A look that meant non-committal approval that would later become a soft, polite no. My father finally spoke. "We'll see, Ava. Things have been busy lately." Busy. They were always busy when it came to me. Still, I reminded them again 2 weeks later. And again 1 week before. Each time, I received the same vague responses. But I was hopeful, even when hope had already proven to be a dangerous thing. Then came graduation day. It was warm, sunny, perfect. Students hugged their families, laughed, took pictures, celebrated. Parents cried. Siblings cheered. I kept turning my head toward the crowd, scanning faces, searching for someone, anyone from my family. Nothing. The ceremony started. My name was called. I walked across the stage alone. No cheers. No claps from familiar hands. No one shouting my name. When the ceremony ended, I checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. Not even a congratulations. I remember sitting on the edge of a fountain, watching the other graduates take photos with parents who held them like precious miracles. A lump rose in my throat, heavy and humiliating. Maybe I wasn't a miracle. Maybe in their story, I was an afterthought. And maybe, just maybe, I was finally done trying. That night, I didn't go home. I went to my tiny studio apartment, sat on my bed, and let myself feel everything I had ignored for years. Not just the disappointment, not just the hurt, but the clarity. I realized something powerful. If they would not show up for me at my best, they never would. And I had wasted too much of my youth hoping they'd change. So I made myself a promise. I will build a life so extraordinary, their absence will no longer be a wound, it will be evidence of their blindness. The next morning, while families were still celebrating, I opened my laptop and began planning my future with the same determination that had carried me through everything else. I moved cities, took that tech job, worked like my life depended on it. And for the first time, I lived for myself. My family barely checked in. I stopped expecting them to. Years passed. My career took off faster than I imagined. Promotions came. Raises came. Opportunities opened like doors that had been waiting for me all along. At 28, I signed the deed to my $5 million penthouse overlooking the city skyline, a place so breathtaking it felt unreal every time I stepped inside. And my family still knew nothing. That was about to change. Not because I wanted validation, but because life has a strange way of placing truth in people's faces when they least expect it. And the truth was this. They had ignored me when I had nothing. They would not ignore me now. But not for the reasons they hoped. I never intended for my family to find out about my penthouse. Not because I was hiding it, but because my life no longer revolved around earning their approval. I had built something for myself. A future. A home. A life that felt too peaceful to disturb with old wounds. But fate, or maybe irony, had its own plans. It started with a phone call from Lauren, my older sister. We hadn't spoken properly in months. Not out of anger, but because conversations with her had always been one-sided, orbiting around her job, her achievements, her newest milestone. That night, my phone lit up with her name. I almost let it ring out. Almost. But something in me said, answer it. So I did. Ava. Oh my gosh, thank goodness you picked up. She breathed dramatically. Listen, I'm going to a conference next week in your city. It's super last minute, but could I stay with you for a few days? I blinked. My place? I asked gently. You know I moved over a year ago, right? Oh, yeah, I know that. She rushed on, though I doubted she did. But hotels are full, and I figured, it'd be fun to catch up. Catch up. The words tasted strange coming from her. Still, part of me softened. She was my sister. And I was trying to be someone who didn't hold grudges, not even the ones that carved deep. Sure, I said. You can stay. She squealed. Perfect. Text me your address. Love you. The call ended before I could question the odd flutter in my gut. 2 days later, I sent her the address to my penthouse. Not the building. The penthouse. 15 minutes passed. Then my phone buzzed. Lauren. Penthouse? Wait. Ava. What is this? Another message. Is this a typo? A joke? I hesitated before replying. Me. No joke. It's my home. I watched the little 3 dots appear, disappear, reappear. Then, how? When did you get a penthouse? Like a real penthouse? A quiet satisfaction warmed my chest, not spiteful, just validating. For years, I had been the sibling no one asked about. Now, suddenly, she wanted details. I answered simply, I've worked hard. My career has been good to me. There was a long pause. Then, Ava, wow. I'm proud of you. Really. I can't wait to see the place. And just like that, the tone had shifted. When Lauren arrived, she stepped into the penthouse and froze. The foyer opened into 20-foot ceilings, marble floors, a glass staircase looping upward like a ribbon of light. The living room windows spanned 2 stories high, framing the city skyline like a living painting. She didn't speak for almost 30 seconds. Then, Ava, she whispered, this is insane. I smiled politely. Welcome. She walked around slowly. Touching surfaces she had no reason to touch: granite counters, polished chrome, the soft leather of the sofa. Every movement carried unspoken questions. How did you afford this? Why didn't we know? Who even are you now? Later that evening, she asked for a tour. Then another. Then pictures just for memories. But I wasn't naive. These weren't memories she wanted. They were trophies.
Proof.
Proof that the sister she ignored had become someone worth noticing. The next morning, I found her in the kitchen, making coffee. But her voice carried something new. A tone I recognized from childhood, but hoped I'd never hear again. "So," she began casually, "how much do places like this go for?" I sipped my tea. "5 million. She choked. "5, Ava, are you serious?" I nodded. "And you bought it? Like, it's yours?" "Yes." Her eyes widened, then narrowed. Then she smiled, not the warm, sibling smile people like to imagine, but a calculating one.
Wow.
Mom and Dad will freak. A coldness tightened in my stomach. "I didn't tell them," I said. "Well, you have to. This is major." "No," I said softly. "I don't have to." She blinked, taken aback, as if the idea of withholding information from our parents was close to sacrilege. "Well," she said slowly, "they'll find out anyway." And she was right. She made sure of it. 2 days after she left, my phone exploded with messages. First came my mother.
Mom.
"Ava, sweetheart, your sister mentioned something about you buying a luxury condo?"
Can we talk?
Then my father.
Dad.
"Call me when you can. We should catch up." Catch up. The same words Lauren used. Words none of them had bothered with for years. I didn't respond. Within hours, they tried again.
And again.
Until my phone buzzed with a third notification, one I didn't expect. A family group chat. Created just for me.
Dad.
"Ava, honey, we're so proud of you. Why didn't you tell us sooner?"
Mom.
"Yes. We want to hear everything. Maybe we can visit sometime." Visit. They had never visited any apartment I'd lived in before. Not even my college campus dorm. And suddenly they wanted to fly across states? I put the phone down. I didn't reply. For years, I had lived in a silent corner of their world. Now, the moment they discovered what I had achieved, I was suddenly front and center. Their daughter hadn't changed. Their interest had. Days passed. The messages kept coming. My father sent long paragraphs reminiscing about how proud he'd always been. My mother sent pictures of the family, as if nostalgia could erase a lifetime of neglect. Lauren sent daily texts filled with emojis and enthusiasm. And then, Ethan, the youngest, the miracle child. "Ethan. Hey sis, heard you got a penthouse. That's sick. Want to hang out sometime? I could visit with Mom and Dad." I noticed he added himself into the invitation. Convenient. I stared at the screen, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Anger. Not the explosive kind, but the quiet, heavy kind that forms when clarity hardens into truth. Where were these people when I cried alone after graduation? Where were they when I worked 2 jobs to pay rent in my early 20s? Where were they when I needed encouragement or love or simply presence? Nowhere. They had been nowhere. And now they wanted access to the life I built without them. That weekend, I received a phone call from my mother. I hesitated, then answered. "Oh, Ava," she exclaimed immediately. "I've been so worried. Why haven't you replied to us?" I took a breath. "I've been busy." Yes, of course," she said. "But sweetheart, your sister told us the place is absolutely gorgeous. Your father and I were thinking maybe we could come visit in a few weeks. Make it a family trip." Family. A word that suddenly felt foreign. Why now? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Silence. Then she laughed lightly. "Well, because we want to see you, dear." But I heard the truth beneath the polish. The curiosity. The sudden interest in my life only after it looked impressive. "You didn't come to my graduation," I whispered. The line went quiet. "That was years ago," she said finally, her tone tightening. "We're talking about now." But the past mattered, especially to the person who lived through it. "We were busy back then," she added defensively. "You know how life gets." Busy. Always busy. I closed my eyes. "I'll think about it," I said. She brightened instantly. "Wonderful. Let us know as soon as you can." When the call ended, the silence of the penthouse wrapped around me like warm armor. Once upon a time, that silence would have felt lonely.
Now.
It felt like freedom. Over the next week, I wrestled with the question, should I let them back in? Part of me still yearned for a family that cared. But another part, the part forged from years of emotional neglect, knew letting them in now meant inviting manipulation wrapped in affection. Their sudden interest wasn't love. It was opportunity. And I had worked too hard to become someone I was finally proud of to let old wounds reopen. Still, closure required confrontation. And confrontation required courage. So, I made a decision. I invited them. Not to reclaim our relationship, but to reclaim my voice. What they didn't know was that this visit would change everything.
For them.
And for me. The day my family arrived at my penthouse, the sky was the same pale silver as it had been on my graduation day, beautiful, but distant. It felt symbolic.
Poetic, even.
I watched from the balcony as their taxi pulled up in front of the building. The lobby attendants greeted them, taking their luggage, guiding them inside. Through the glass, I could see their faces tilt upward, scanning the architecture, marveling at the marble columns and cascading chandelier. They looked small, not in size, but in presence. And for once, I realized I wasn't the small one anymore. When they reached the penthouse level, I opened the door. My mother gasped first. "Oh, Ava," she whispered, stepping across the threshold. "This is stunning." My father followed slowly, eyes darting around the space, as if he'd stepped into a world he didn't understand. Ethan walked in last, awestruck, his jaw loose. The silence stretched, thick with disbelief. Then my mother turned to me with a trembling smile. "We had no idea you were doing so well." I nodded. "I know." Something flickered in her expression, guilt, maybe. Or fear. It was hard to tell. "Your sister only told us bits and pieces," my father added. "We wanted to hear everything from you." I motioned toward the living room.
Sit.
"We'll talk." They settled onto the sofa, shifting uncomfortably on the soft leather, unsure of how to act in a space so unlike anything they'd ever associated with me. I sat opposite them, crossing my legs, my posture steady. For the first time in my life, I felt in control. My mother broke the silence first. "Ava, why didn't you tell us about your job, your success, this home?" Her voice trembled with a practiced softness, the same softness she used whenever she wanted to avoid accountability. I looked at her evenly. "You never asked." She flinched. My father cleared his throat. "Well, sweetheart, we assumed you were fine. You've always been independent." "That's convenient," I replied gently. He frowned. "What do you mean?" I inhaled slowly, letting the truth settle in my chest before releasing it. "I mean," I said, "being independent wasn't a choice. It was survival. I learned early on that if I didn't take care of myself, no one else would." My mother looked down at her hands. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "But Ava," my father insisted, "that's not fair. We love you. We just—" I cut him off softly. "You didn't show up. Not when it counted." The room froze. I stood up and walked toward the massive window, the skyline glowing behind me. My reflection stared back stronger, steadier, no longer invisible. "My graduation," I said quietly. "I waited for you. I searched the crowd for hours. I checked my phone all night, and I got nothing. Not even a text." My mother covered her mouth. "Ava, we told you we were busy." I turned, and I believed that. For years. But now I see the truth. You weren't too busy for celebrations. You weren't too busy for Lauren's job milestones. You weren't too busy for Ethan's sports events. You were only too busy for me. My father stood, bracing himself with the back of the sofa. "Ava, that's not—" "It is," I said. "And you know it." Their silence was the admission they couldn't say aloud. Lauren had told them I'd changed. But the truth was, I had simply stopped shrinking myself to fit the place they gave me. Ethan finally spoke, voice timid. "I didn't know you felt like that." I looked at him, softer than before. "You were a kid." But they weren't. My mother began to cry small, controlled sobs. Not the explosive kind of guilt, but the quiet realization that something precious had slipped through her fingers without her noticing. "Ava, honey, we're here now," she whispered. I shook my head gently. "That's not enough." They stared at me, confused. And so I clarified. "You're here because I have something impressive. Something you suddenly want to be associated with. Not because you value me." My father's face reddened. "That's not true." "Then why now?" I asked calmly. "Why only after the penthouse? Why not when I was building my future from the ground up? Why never a call to ask how I was doing? Why never a visit? Why never a moment where you showed interest unless it benefited you?" He opened his mouth, closed it, had no answer. My mother approached me, wiping her cheeks. "We made mistakes. But families heal. We can start fresh." I smiled sadly. "Mom, I don't hate you. I don't resent you. I just don't trust you." She froze, breath catching. "It took me years to understand this, but I see it clearly now. You don't get to appear only in the chapters where my life looks impressive." A long silence draped over us. Then my father spoke quietly, almost defeated. "So, what does this mean? Are you cutting us off?" "No," I said. "I'm setting boundaries." They watched me, waiting. "You're welcome in my life," I continued softly, "but only if you're here for me, not my home, not my success, not the version of me that makes you look good." My mother swallowed hard. "How do we prove that?" "By showing up," I said. "Not when it's convenient. Not when there's something to gain. But consistently. Patiently. Honestly." They nodded slowly, uncertain, but listening. "And until then," I added, "don't expect access to my world. Not the tours. Not the bragging rights. Not the penthouse photo ops." Lauren had done plenty of those in the 2 days she visited. My mother's eyes filled with shame. My father looked away. A few minutes later, my father spoke in a voice I'd never heard from him, quiet, cracked. "Ava, we failed you." The words hung in the air like something fragile and holy. "We can't fix the past," he continued, "but we want to do better. If you'll let us." I studied him for a long moment. The sincerity in his voice was unfamiliar, uncertain,
Human.
"I'm not asking for perfection," I said. "Just presence." My mother reached for my hand. This time I didn't pull away. "We'll try," she whispered. I nodded. That's all I wanted. Not the attention. Not the admiration. Just effort. We spent the rest of the day talking, really talking for the first time in my life. There were no easy resolutions. No magical fixes. Just vulnerability, discomfort, and slow understanding. But that was enough. When they left the next morning, my mother hugged me tighter than she ever had. My father told me he was proud this time, with no agenda behind the words. Ethan promised to call more often, and surprisingly, he did. Were we healed?
No.
But healing had finally begun. That night, standing on the balcony overlooking the city lights, I felt something shift in me. I had spent years believing my family's neglect reflected my worth. But now I knew better. My success hadn't made me valuable. I had always been valuable. They just hadn't been able to see it. But I finally could. If you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or unappreciated by the people meant to love you the most, I want you to remember this. You are not defined by who fails to notice you. You are defined by who you choose to become despite them. And sometimes, the quietest revenge, the most powerful one, is becoming someone who no longer needs the validation that once broke you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched you, if it reminded you of your own journey, or if you simply want to lift up stories like this one, please leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe for more cinematic tales of strength, healing, and the unexpected turns life gives us. Your stories matter. Your voice matters. And I'll be here to tell them with you.